Hello and welcome to the DOGE and Maha News Channel. My name is Chris. This is a channel where I bring you all the latest information on the Department of Government Efficiency and Make America Healthy Again. In this video, we're going to react to a video that Steve Ballmer has regarding the federal budget and federal spending. A lot of good information. I learned a lot. Let's go ahead and check this out together.
The federal budget is a measurement of how much our government spends and how much revenue it takes in. And the budget really took off with COVID. In the years leading up to the pandemic, annual federal government spending hovered between $5 and $5.3 trillion, adjusted for inflation. Then COVID hit in 2020, and the budget really went up to $7.7 trillion to help us through the crisis. Wow. Federal spending has exceeded $6 trillion every year since. It's really hard to make sense of $1 trillion of anything. So try thinking of it this way. If you spent $1,000 every day, it would take over 16 million years to spend $6 trillion. That's a big number. In 2023, the federal government spent less as COVID spending went away, only $6.2 trillion. But it took in $4.5 trillion of mostly tax revenue. This means our
Let's go ahead and pause right here in the video. I want to check out this graphic here. So the government spent $6.16 trillion and only had revenue of $4.47 trillion. That means there's a deficit of roughly a little over $1.5 trillion. And you can see on the right how the money was spent, Social Security, defense, Medicare, assistance to individuals. Interest on the debt is a big number there. Transfers to states and other spending. Interesting. Okay. And then as far as their income, the big chunk is individual income taxes, payroll taxes, corporate taxes, customs, sales and excise taxes, and other. Those three are really small.
Our government had to come up with $1.7 trillion to cover the difference between spending and revenue. In government speak, that's our deficit. Those deficits are ultimately funded with borrowing. When you add up all of the federal government's borrowing over the years, you're going to get close to $35 trillion, which is the total national debt today, which in 2020 was the largest share of our economy as measured by our GDP at any time since World War II. Now, let's dive into the details, starting with the spending part of the budget. About 60% of all federal spending is categorized as mandatory spending, which amounted to $3.8 trillion last year. This spending is essentially on autopilot because it funds programs whose eligibility rules and benefit formulas are set in law. This consists mostly of programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and Veterans Care.
Now, I agree that this spending here is mandatory. You know, we want to pay our Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all that kind of stuff. However, are there opportunities to be more efficient in the way we spend that money? Can the recipients get their money, but we can do it more efficiently? I think there's probably plenty of opportunities because I suspect that the way we process this money is definitely probably wasteful. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to improve the way we give this money out. So there's opportunity there as well.
Then there are interest payments on our debt, which totaled $659 billion last year.
Wow, $659 billion just in interest payments. That is a lot of money. Yeah, obviously that's mandatory spending too. We have to pay that back.
We're going to have to pay our interest on our debt. Everything else Washington does, from defense and education to transportation, scientific research, it's all funded by what's called discretionary spending, which accounted for $1.7 trillion last year.
So $1.7 trillion is discretionary. A big part of that is national defense. Can we be more efficient there? Yeah, of course. I mean, we're spending way too much money on products, buying from these defense contractors. They are overcharging us quite a bit, and you hear all the stories about how much a screw costs or a toilet costs or all those things. So there's definitely opportunity there, as well as all this weird medical research. We can get rid of all of that. It's not big money, but it adds up. So, and then also making sure that any other processes in here are made more efficient. For example, how do they determine who gets these different contracts for the national defense? I'm sure there's a lot of ways we can make that more efficient as well. So it's going to not be one big chunk of money. It's going to be small pieces here and there as DOGE works towards this goal of reducing spending by $2 trillion.
Year. Let's do a fact check. Mandatory spending, $3.8 trillion. Discretionary spending, $1.7 trillion. And net interest on the debt, $659 billion. Total, $6.16 trillion in government spending. Now let's try taking a deeper dive into the two biggest pieces of mandatory spending, Social Security and Medicare. Social Security has been around since 1935. It provides retirement, disability, and survivor benefits to eligible individuals. Some key facts about the program: it now costs about $1.4 trillion a year and accounts for 22% of the total federal budget. There are over 67 million people receiving Social Security, and they're getting an average benefit of about $1,900 a month for the actual retirees, and it's about $1,500 or so for the disabled and surviving spouses. Social Security, it actually relies on payroll taxes from current workers to go into a trust fund, and then that trust fund pays out the benefits to those who receive them. With an aging population, there are projections that the Social Security Trust Fund will be exhausted by the year 2035. Now, projections about where Social Security is heading could be wrong. As the old Yankee catcher from my youth, Yogi Berra, liked to say, it's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. Let's talk about the second biggest mandatory spending item, which is Medicare. Medicare costs the federal government about $850 billion in 2023, and that's about 14% of all of our federal spending. The bulk of the spending provides health insurance for anyone 65 and older. Today, Medicare covers 67 million Americans, or about 1 in 4 adults. And in 2022, which is the most recent year released, we spend about $16,000 per beneficiary per year.
Now, what I'd like to know, we spend about $16,000 per beneficiary, but how much waste is being spent to process these claims and to process the checks and to provide the benefits? I think there's probably a lot of waste. I mean, our medical system in America is very expensive. I know there's a lot of waste in it and a lot of corruption as well. I'd like to see what DOGE can do to streamline those processes to make the payouts for this Medicare a lot more efficient. I'm sure there's a ton of opportunity there to save money.
Medicare's share of the federal budget has increased from 10% in 1994 to 14% as the number of enrollees in the program has continued to grow with our aging population. Medicaid, which is a program that provides health insurance coverage for those who can least afford it, is jointly financed by the federal and state governments. In total, the federal government, though, paid for $616 billion of it in 2023. As of December of 2023, there's about 78 million Americans on Medicaid, and enrollment for the program has grown since the passage of the Affordable Care Act in 2010.
It's going to continue to increase as part of the overall spending, so it's important that we figure out a way to kind of prevent that from growing right now. Continue to let people get their benefits, of course, but how can we make it more efficient so that they can get paid, but the overall cost continues to go down?
Another line item in mandatory spending is veterans benefits. They amount to about $299 billion. I, for one, am really happy about the mandatory nature of the benefits for our veterans. Here's another big ticket item. Through a combination of mandatory and discretionary spending, Washington sent nearly $1.1 trillion in grants to our states and local governments in 2023. More than half of that was for Medicaid, which we just discussed, as well as some children's health programs. The rest of this spend with the states is for a range of programs from education to infrastructure and also some other social programs. National defense is the single largest category of the discretionary part of federal spending, and it came in at $820 billion in 2023. The two biggest defense expenditures are salaries and benefits and maintaining and acquiring new weapons systems. America has 1.3 million active duty service members in the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, and elsewhere. We have 767,000 people in the reserves. These are people in civilian jobs who do regular training, though, for the military and can be called into active duty in the future. And 779,000 are civilians that are filling various support roles in the military. I actually had no idea we had so many civilians doing important work for our military.
That's a great point. That is a lot of people. What did he say? 779,000 people in civilian roles supporting the military. I wonder if there could be some opportunity there as well. Can we streamline the work that they're doing? Why is it so many? I don't really know. I don't understand it. But to me, it looks like a place of opportunity for DOGE to look into.
America has also 16 million veterans, a number that is declining. In 1990, about 11% of the population were veterans, while today it's about 6%. Finally, as a share of American GDP, defense spending is about 3%. That's the lowest it's been since the data started being published around the Korean War.
I think if we stop spending money on these wars that we shouldn't be involved in, and then just beef up our technology and our security for our own country, for America first, I think we can probably spend less money, but have a really great military presence and defense. That way we're spending the money on ourselves, on our own people, our own technology, our own equipment, and stop sending the money and our equipment over to other countries and getting involved in their wars. It doesn't make sense to me.
When you combine all federal mandatory spending with discretionary defense spending and our interest payments, that accounts for 86% of the 2023 federal spend. The remaining 14% is discretionary spending, and it covers the rest of the federal government, from payments to farmers, food safety, environmental protection, the administration of justice, and more. Some bills signed in the last few years will also impact our budget. The 2021 Infrastructure and Jobs Act will inject an additional $110 billion on average per year through 2026 into public works priorities like roads, bridges, water, and broadband. That's a 32% increase over the 2021 combined federal, state, and local spending in those areas.
I want to know what we've gotten out of that. What have they actually built with that money? I suspect almost nothing. So to me, a lot of this stuff, they say they're going to spend money on infrastructure, but you rarely see like an impact in your local city or, things like that. So it just makes me wonder where that money's going.
However, the exact funds are not evenly distributed each year and are still being allocated. Now let's look at where the money comes from. $4.4 trillion out of our $4.5 trillion of federal government revenue came from taxes. Of the taxes collected in 2023, $2.2 trillion, or 49%, were from individual income taxes, which are the taxes that are paid on income from salary, commissions, fees, tips, capital gains, dividends, retirement income, and more. $1.6 trillion, which is 37% of the revenue, came from payroll taxes, and another $420 billion, or 9%, came from corporate income taxes. So those are the big revenue streams. The federal government does get money from other sources, including another $80 billion from customs duties, $76 billion from sales and excise taxes, which are taxes on goods like alcohol, gas, cigarettes. Let's take a closer look at individual income taxes.
I'm curious how much the IRS spends collecting these taxes. I think it would be awesome if we had a flat tax, got rid of the IRS, and just had a very simple tax payment system, and really wouldn't need all the money spent collecting and all the paperwork and all that stuff. I think it would really be a boon for the economy, but that's just me. What do you guys think?
And who pays them? The top 5%, who made a minimum of about $253,000, paid $1.4 trillion of tax, or close to 66% of all income taxes collected in 2021, while the top 10%, who made at least $170,000, paid $1.7 trillion, or almost 76% of all income tax. The bottom 50% of filers who made less than $46,637, which is 77 million people, paid 2.3% of all income taxes.
Wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know it was that little. So, people like me, maybe people like you that are less than $47,000 per year only pay 2.3% of the income taxes collected, where I think the graphic before that said the top 10% of earners are paying roughly 76% of the personal income taxes collected. That's really interesting.
But just to remember, people do pay into Social Security and Medicare via payroll taxes, and they're subject to various state, local taxes, and of course, sales taxes as part of that. In 2017, Congress passed and President Trump signed the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. That lowered individual rates for every tax bracket and increased the tax credit for each child to $2,000. Most of that $2,000 is refundable, which means you receive cash back even if you don't owe federal taxes. The bill also cut the corporate income tax rate from 35% to 21%. Now, adjusted for inflation, tax revenue from companies went from $379 billion in 2016 to $248 billion in 2018 and $422 billion by 2021.
Okay, so what did he say that the corporate tax, that President Trump dropped the corporate tax, I believe it was 35% to 21% in 2017. So you can see on this graph that in 2017, the corporate tax revenue dipped quite a bit from 27 to 2018. And then it was kind of leveled off. And then the last 3 years, it really went up a lot. So that kind of tells me that the corporations were making more money and obviously paying more taxes because of that. So it's kind of interesting. It'll be interesting to see what Trump does in his next term and how that impacts the corporate taxes that are received.
There's a key thing to note, though. At the end of 2025, the individual tax cuts expire. They go away, while the corporate tax cuts do remain in place. Let's do a fact check. The federal government spent $6.2 trillion last year, and it took in nearly $4.5 trillion in revenue. That leaves a deficit of $1.7 trillion just for 2023. I'm going to let you know my personal view on this. I do worry about the size and especially the growth in our debt. In the last 15 years alone, Washington has added another $24 trillion to our total debt. And the interest the government pays on that debt has gone up just like it has for millions of Americans.
Let's take a look at this. Now, it has gone up under every single president, whether it was Democrat or Republican. You can see that the gradual incline of our debt. 1995 is roughly $5 trillion. Then around 2007, it was about $8 trillion. 2013, it was about 16 trillion. 2019, 21 trillion. And in 2024, it is about $36 trillion. So it's gone up quite a bit. It continues to rise under every single president. And honestly, we need to put a stop to it. We need to balance our budget. I think the last president that balanced the budget was actually Bill Clinton. I don't know what year that was, but it was in the 90s. And we need to balance it. First, we need to stop increasing our national debt, balance the budget, not have a deficit anymore. And, we can do that two ways: increase taxes or decrease spending. And I'm a proponent of decreasing spending. Do not increase taxes, please.
America still has the largest and most vibrant economy in the world, and that has sustained us so far. But in my view, if we don't have our fiscal house in order, it could all unwind. Now, you may or may not agree with me. That's really not the point. You have data now to help you start thinking about these issues. And, of course, we'll have to see what the presidential candidates have to say about the matter. That's it for the federal budget. Thanks for hanging in there. I hope you agree. The more we know, the better voters we can be.
Well, I thought that was a really interesting video. I do like seeing all of the numbers kind of laid out like that, and it makes you kind of think, okay, where are opportunities for us to save money or to decrease spending? Where are some of those opportunities? When the numbers are laid out like that, it honestly looks like DOGE is going to have a very difficult time decreasing spending by $2 trillion because where's it going to come from? But there's obviously a lot of small opportunities. Can it add up to $2 trillion? Can it at least add up to $1.7 trillion so we have a balanced budget? I hope so. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Remember, I always do put a link to the original video in the notes or in the description below, so you can check out the original video without my commentary if you want to do that. But make sure, if you're interested in following the DOGE story or learning more about this as I am, make sure you like and subscribe to this video. I do have a playlist of other DOGE videos you can check out right here. I'll go ahead and leave a link to that playlist. Also, if you want to subscribe, go ahead and click on this button right here. And thanks a lot for watching. I appreciate you, and I'll catch you on the next one.